So, welcome to this new session of the Salon of Classical Architecture, where today we will be talking about the staircases, a sort of set of inspiration staircases for anyone wanted to get inspiration and know more about classical staircases. And then, as usual, we will have our question time and project critique. So you can bring your project and we can have a collective review. So as you know, we have been doing this for quite a while, since the beginning of the year. We are almost done with it. So the whole idea of this is to give you some resources, some tips on how to do and design classical architecture, and how to get a better introduction onto it. Today, the topic, as you can see, we have gone for a introduction to the classical order, some practical applications, so the use of the canthus leaf, floor plans, elevations, floor patterns, staircases, and then we're going to move to bathrooms, Gothic, and landscaping by the end of the course. But today, we're in that in between, we're going to talk about the staircases, and we're going to talk about both internal and external staircases. So first of all, let's talk about internal staircases. And for internal staircases, a little bit of vocabulary to understand the different part of the staircases. The tread is the flat part. The riser is the vertical part. The nosing is usually a little part of the tread that projects over the riser. And more important, the element that I want you to take in mind here is a stringer. The stringer is the sort of diagonal piece that supports the staircase. And there are two types of stringers. You can have a closed stringer and a cut stringer. So I am omitting, obviously, other situations if you have the cut stringer in the middle of the staircases, because that's a modern invention, or other types of double cut stringers, because they're much more functional. And I want to focus on proper traditional and classical staircases. Why am I focusing on this? I am not talking about other elements. The idea of the stringer itself is very important, because it's going to dictate also how the railings are going to work and how we're going to perceive the staircase. So once you are designing a staircase, the most important element for you to take into consideration is the stringer. How are you going to do the stringer even before moldings, before material? You need to think about that little element. Why? Because a cut stringer allows the spindles, the balusters, to sit directly on the step. And therefore, you need to have a very, very, very clear sequence and position of the balusters in relationship with the step, which sometimes might not look as aesthetic as in this one. And in any case, as you see, this staircase is a bit carved. This requires a lot of coordination, and it doesn't always work as well as in this case. At the same time, I mean, when we are talking about other type of that was like a timber balusters, this is metal balusters. You can see here that all of them are sitting in the same position, and we need to put some intermediate pieces to give additional stability to the staircase. So this is something that needs to be taken into consideration, because if we go for I mean, this is another example, beautiful example of cut stringer. Another one associated with a cantilever staircase, because the cantilever staircases in UK, they are very important, they are very monumental, and it's a bit of show off for the builder and for the architect and for the stonemason to show off their skills, because those pieces of stone are embedded around 30 centimeters into the wall. It's not so much, considering that that's probably 1/5 of the overall distance of the staircase. So it's quite interesting. As opposed to that, the closest stringer allows us to have a different type of railing that then can flow as we wish. This is a timber staircase, but also in a metal staircase, it allows any type of beautiful composition that is unrelated. We don't care on where the railing is going to sit, because all the steps are ending on the stringer. So that's very important as well, because it will allow you more freedom in composition, but at the same time, it loses the appeal of seeing all the steps almost being cantilevered. We have another one. This is in the Palace of, this is Miramar Mansion in the United States, although it is molded at the image of the Petit Trianon. And you can see very well how it doesn't matter what the elements sit. You don't see the steps, so we don't know if these vertical elements or the round elements are sitting in any specific part of the staircase. We don't know. We don't care. And that obviously for certain type of designs, that for very complex design that it's start entering into the field of complex designs, it's something very desirable. Or you can see here increasing the complexity when we're having like a proper pattern, a proper motive. It's better to have a stringer than having to rely on vertical spindles that will sit on the steps and are going to limit our creativity to certain extent. And here I wanted to bring two contemporary examples from the company I'm working at the moment, Catherine Pulley, of both the closest stringer and the cut stringer. These two ones are completely new staircases. So I wanted to bring in them because of that, because how you can building and also the possibilities. I mean, in the case of the image in the right with the closest stringer, the staircase is doing like a tan. It's a bit of a narrow staircase compared with the other one. The space is limited. The staircase has to work in a certain way, and the stringer is allowing us, and also to prevent problems on what every element is sitting. There is a continuous band of metal where this element sits. So it's much easier to create a composition with a stringer. While in this one, we have several rhythms that we need to respect. As you see, I mean, we are creating a sort of line here that obviously it's making me have two florets at different heights at the bottom, and also all the two steps have to be in the same position. All the holes for the iron. What does this mean? That you cannot make carve or you cannot make more bold elements. It works very well with a straight staircase, but it stops working very well in the moment the staircase starts being tapered or carved. And I wanted to bring here the regulations because it's very important to bear in mind the regulations. And we normally, some people don't look at them, or you just draw whatever you want, and then you find a problem that then they tell you, no, this isn't allowed by the regulations. And obviously, these regulations are modern. I mean, they come from the early 21st century. These are the British ones, but the British ones mimic the European Technical Code, and they are the most restrictive in the world. So normally, when I work abroad, I like applying the UK regulations or the European ones because for that reason. So what these regulations are telling us is that when the staircase is less than 1 meter and you want to turn, the minimum thread width at the narrow end is 50 mil, so 5 centimeters. So this is very easy for short staircases. You can get this and it works quite well. I mean, obviously after the meter, we stop considering the distance. But what happens when we have wider than 1 meter? Because normally when you want to create a statement a staircase, you need to go for more than 1 meter. I normally say that if you have a space in a house, you should go for 1.5 meters. If you want to be very, very generous, 2 meters. Usually no more than 1.8 or 2 meters, because then you have to put intermediate railings. So bear that in mind as well. So that's why sometimes in buildings that have been refurbished, old buildings have been refurbished, all of a sudden you find an ugly railing in the middle. And that is because they had to put it because of regulations, and the architect or the engineer or the public servant who put it didn't have any sensitivity towards the heritage. So the problem is not the regulation, the problem is the design. So I always say this, I mean, because there are always debates about the Chart of Athens, the heritage regulations. The regulations don't allow you to build traditional, and I say, well, I normally say that it's not a matter of legislation, it's a matter of interpretation. And sometimes engineers, insurers, public servants, they don't want to bother about design. They just interpret the regulations straight away, letter by letter. And sometimes you need some flexibility. And that doesn't mean that you're going to skip them. That means that there is also other ways of interpreting the regulation. In the case of the staircase, it goes straightforward, but in others, it is not so straightforward. So, whenever you are building a big staircase, what you need to consider is a distance of 27 centimeters and the thread distance on this element has to be the minimum distance, which in UK is 22 centimeters. And technically, I mean, it tells you that on the other side, if you do an offset of 27, it cannot go more than the maximum. But this is very difficult to do. And normally, if you comply with this side being the minimum, the other one it's allowed to go. But you need to consider all that when you're designing a staircase nowadays, and it can be done. It just requires a little bit more of work. So that's something we will repeat it, that we will insist on this later on. So, set this overall view, we're going to see some inspiration. So, we're going to have an inspirational journey on staircases. And the first one I'm bringing is the so-called Scalera del Bramante in the Vatican Museum. And this staircase was done by Bramante at the beginning of 16th century and has the interest, as opposed to other ones that we are going to see, that that the order changes on each level. So you can see that, I mean, we can see a little bit these are Corinthian capitals, but you can see Ionic capitals, and then below the Doric, and at the bottom the Tuscan. So on each level they are changing. It's a very interesting staircase. And it's open to the public, but normally, because everyone, when you go to the Vatican Museum, is running to the Sixtine Chapel, it's usually not not spotted. People don't spot it, but it's there. You can visit it. So if you ever go to Rome, don't run to the Sixtine Chapel. Just try to find the Scalera del Bramante, find the Braccio Nuovo, find the Vatican Library. All that is open, and the Sixtine Chapel isn't going to move from there, and you're going to see very, very interesting architectural spaces. So, and this is in the Vatican Museum. Together with this inspiration on the Vatican, we have the Scala Regia, which is, as you enter into St. Peter's Basilica, to the right, you have it. You cannot enter from the Basilica. You have to enter to the Scala Regia from the square. Well, you cannot enter. The Swiss word will stop you, will prevent you to enter, but you can take a look at it. And this staircase has a very interesting perspective effect that make it looks much bigger than what it actually is. So the staircase is big, but once you are there, it isn't as big as it looks. And you can see as well here how with the tapering, it's increasing the effect. And as you can see, I mean, this what you see here marked with letter B is the narthex of St. Peter Basilica, and this with letter A and this Porte dei Corridori is connected you directly with the square. And that's the point from where you will see it. I mean, here there is a chancel, and you will always be able to see this wonderful sculpture of Constantine in the Battle of Ponte Milvio, but that's the only thing. So it's a very complicated staircase. It's a very theatrical staircase. You can link it as well with the Galleria Prospectica in Palazzo Espada. But I mean, it's also telling us that staircase can show some dramatic effect. It's not only the galleries and the normal spaces that can show the dramatic effect. And talking about drama, I'm bringing one of my favorite staircases. I mean, there are thousands of staircases in the world, and we are doing here like a sort of 1 hour chat, the introduction to classical staircase. So we cannot cover all of them. So I'm making a selection. It's my selection. Other people might choose other ones, and we can discuss later on about which are your favorite staircases in the discussion time, and we can find you on the internet, and we can discuss them so that everyone can share their opinion on your views and which are your favorite staircase and why. I am deliberately omitting, because I remember some days ago we had a bit of discussion in the WhatsApp group about the staircases, and a lot of people started to bring very beautiful medieval staircases, but I am omitting them for time reasons and because the focusing here is classical. But maybe in the future we can treat medieval staircases. So this staircase that we have here, has anyone seen this staircase? Does any of you know where this staircase is? Have you ever seen it? No, no, no. Come
Yes,
on.
yes, but I cannot remember the name, unfortunately.
Okay. So do you know where it is?
In Italy.
Okay, good.
Uh,
Where in Italy?
I don't know if it is Rome or Florence.
In
No,
Florence. Okay.
Florence. Okay.
Any more intake? Any more intake? We have another comment here. It's a library, correct, Lara? It's a library. It's the Laurentian Library in Florence. It's the so-called Ricetto. It's the vestibule to the Laurentian Library in Florence. So it is the library associated to the Basilica di San Lorenzo in Florence. So it was a project by the Medici, and this vestibule was done by Michelangelo. And the staircase as well was done by him, and it's quite a beautiful staircase, and it's why I'm bringing it, because the space itself is quite amazing. The columns, instead of protruding from the walls, they are embedded into the wall, so they are not just a decorative element, they're having a proper structural function. And the whole combination of white and pietra serena is giving a very, very elegant, and as I said, I mean, a structural and compositional look. This is a purely architectural space, but composed in a sculptural way. Only as Michelangelo could do it. And here you have a bit of a overview of the staircase. It's big. It's a big staircase. It's a bit unfunctional in the sense that obviously it's taking more space than what it needs. Correct. Michelangelo, and that's true. John Summerson talks about this staircase in the language of classical architecture, because it's a key element in the progress of the Renaissance. We are moving from the sort of elegant eloquence of Bramante in the staircase in the Vatican, putting all the orders together, very perfectly done, showing that he knows the orders, he knows what he's talking about. And Michelangelo is doing this. And Michelangelo is doing much later. So now knowing the orders is not enough in the times of Michelangelo. So he needs to do something else. And being a sculptor, he had a completely different view of the space, and just basically he sculpts the staircase. He doesn't design it, he doesn't build, he sculpts the staircase. And here you have some additional details of it in case anyone is interested. You can check them. I mean, the details are on the internet. It is from a German publication, but there is also a monograph of Michelangelo available on the internet, from the service of from one of the Italian publishers. Yeah, Michelangelo was quite old when he designed these. When at the end he wasn't strong enough to to the sculpture, and only he happened to do the other thing that much to his despair he was good at, which was architecture. So I always define Michelangelo like an excellent sculptor who also happened to be a good painter and a good architect, but his passion was architecture. So, I mean, we have a lot of people from Spain, from America, and I wanted to focus as well. As I said, I mean, we're not going to see the staircase in the Opera de Garnier. Why? Because everyone knows that the staircase is a very beautiful staircase, but there are other staircases that are also worth considering. And I said that I wasn't going to bring fully medieval. This is not fully medieval, although it is in a Gothic cathedral. This is the holy staircase, the golden staircase in the Cathedral of Burgos, which is it's one of the most remarkable staircases of the Renaissance in Spain. A, a very interesting cantilever, a very interesting usage of the classical language, and something that is in between two worlds. It's in between the classical and the medieval, as most of the Spanish Renaissance, and by extension, that's what goes to America. We're making another jump, and this is the staircase, the entrance staircase to the Royal Palace in Madrid. And I wanted to bring it because I think this and maybe another one of the ones I'm showing here are the only two examples that you're going to see with stone balusters or marble balusters. And this is because stone balusters require quite a lot of space. And obviously, I mean, you think about classical and you think, oh, this is very beautiful. and then I'm going to put balusters in the staircase in my house. And then the staircase in your house is 90 centimeters, 1 meter. I mean, you don't need more than 1 meter in a small domestic house, so you don't need that. And then you put that massive baluster that is too heavy. It doesn't work with that. So bear in mind that when you want to use baluster, your staircase needs to be massively big. Yes, the asymmetry, Christian, goes because one is looking at you when you're coming up, and the other is looking at you when you're going down. So it's showing you. It's a sort of a small allegory to the omnipresent power of the Spanish monarchy. So that's a bit where they are looking on both directions. And I think that you have pointed out a very interesting thing. Fully symmetry does not. I mean, doesn't have to be desirable. Even if you consider this build, this structure, we are having a lot of symmetric elements. The whole structure itself is symmetrical, but then if you check the decoration, it stops being symmetrical. See, for example, the shields that are either side of the bolt starting to close the beginning. So it's quite interesting. But yeah, I mean that's a bit the idea. The next staircase we're going to see is the staircase of the Archive of Indias in Seville. This staircase, the Archive of Indias, was done at the end of 16th century in a very flat and severe Renaissance style, which is called Herreriano in Spanish, because has a very direct influence to Juan de Herrera. And the building was initially a sort of stock exchange. Then eventually, once the privilege of holding the stock exchange went from Sevilla to Cadiz, the building went empty, and the King Charles III decided to convert that building into an archive that would contain all the story of the discovery and conquest of America. So it was decreed that all the buildings, or all the documents prior to 1750 or 1760 something, had to come to this archive to be centralized, and any document after that date could be retained by the institutions who had created them. Why? Because obviously we're talking about mid 18th century, and anything prior to that to mid 1700s for them was historical. Anything after the mid 1700s would still be administrative of relative importance or need for the people who were holding those institutions. So, as part of the refurbishment, there was a massive refurbishment. A new staircase is built because you will see now the original staircase taking you to the first floor, which was in much less use. While now, with the new archive, the first floor will become quite used. And here is the staircase. You cannot see much. You can see a little bit of the baluster here. And it's a beautiful marble staircase in an 18th century style that contrasts a little bit with the surroundings. The arches here, they are not from the 18th century. They are from the 16th century, because there was like a courtyard in this point. The vault is from 18th century. And also see how the dado molding for the paneling is creating the railing. So if this is not functionalism, I don't know what it is. So that's for those who say that classical architecture is not functional, that all the elements are decorative and you can remove them and the building is still there. Yeah, but if you remove, in this case, this dado, you're removing the railing, which in this case, being such a wide staircase, you will need it. And this is the original staircase. This is properly end of 16th century staircase, and it's very interesting once you see it, because from the bottom it's a fully cantilevered staircase, and from the bottom is very quirky. It's a very complicated geometry, which is very interesting to to think and consider. And usually, sometimes, depending on the professor that you get, students in Sevilla are told to come here, measure the staircase, and elevate it, because it's quite difficult to draw precisely because of all these things. It's very very interesting geometrically. It's very interesting, and even mathematically to define mathematically all those um, surfaces. It's quite interesting. And here you see, I mean, it's a sort of a spiral staircase, and see as well the beautiful dome when it ends with all these scallops. Very very beautiful. And coming back to run the staircases, I put on one spiral staircase. Sorry, I mean I put Bramantes as the prototype, and taking into consideration the eloquence that Bramante put in there, Vignola in the palace in Caprarola for the Farnes family did another different staircase. In this case, much more elegant, much more. I mean, obviously you can see the walls that are fully painted. Well, the staircase for that Bramante did in the Belvedere was much more functional. This is a proper representative staircase that will become very famous over the time, even more famous than the staircase of Bramante. And the reason would be because the Vatican museums for many many centuries they were closed to the public, while the palace was open for anyone who wanted to pay a fee to enter and see the staircase and the courtyard. So that's something to consider why some elements would take more prominence than others, and why, for example, a lot of the innovations that Bramante brought to the Vatican Museum through the Belvedere, to the Vatican Palace to the Belvedere, didn't have much impact other than what Serlio shows in his treatise, because you couldn't visit the palace, because back then it was just a private palace of the popes. Same thing as the Vatican Library was initially the private library of the Pope. And you can see here the difference, no? The simple eloquence of Bramante as opposed to the very well structured speech that Vignola is telling us here. And see also, for example, at the bottom, you can see how the triglyphs are like slightly tapered and it's following everything. So it's very, very interesting element as well. And coming back to cantilever to continue with the spiral staircase, it is a cantilever staircase in London. The British, the English in general, more the British than not the English than the rest of the British, a little bit the Irish, became masters in cantilevering staircases, while the rest of Europe would require other elements to help, basically arches concealed within the spandrels to create a better transmission of loads. The English ended up designing quite well and working very well with the cantilever staircases. What's the secret of these staircases? Because as I said, I mean they are not. They are probably maximum one third into the wall. That's the sturdiest ones. The secret in here is that obviously from the top all the loads come down and are supported at the bottom step. So if you remove the bottom step, the whole staircase collapse, because then the loads are not transmitted onto the ground, so it loses stability. So it's just that piece that is more important. That's why also sometimes, because maybe the builder was not confident, or maybe the staircase wasn't so cantilevered, you find that the two or three first step are fully solid, and that is to give extra strength to prevent also the pulling and movement from the staircase. And a separate comment has to be done, which we are just going to leave as a note, to the cast iron staircases. These staircases are going to give you later on at the end some examples. You can still do them. I mean, this is obviously a place where you can just buy some spare ones, some salvage ones, but still you can cast staircase, and you can buy them in pieces. Sometimes they are more aesthetic, sometimes they are less aesthetic, but you can do it. And many times, if you have a budget, you can even design it from scratch, because there is not much difference between doing it, buying it off the shelf, and design it from scratch. And the reason is because sometimes the manufacturer has a stock, so that means that you can buy the pieces, and then it will be easier for you to for the manufacturer to cast more like the one that you have just bought. But if there is no stock, the difference between a new design that you provide, you need to provide the design. Obviously, it's not, you cannot rely on the artisan. Not because the artisan isn't going to do to be able to. It's because they're going to charge you for a new design. If you're happy to pay, it will be probably much better than the design that you do because they know their trade, they know their job. But you can also go with a design, and this is something for you to consider when you're working with manufacturers, with artisans. You need to give them a clear instruction if you are expecting them to do a quick work and at a price where you are only paying for the manual work. If you want to pay for their creativity, you need to pay for their creativity, and that's something that you need to consider. And if you need to give them full documentation. You cannot give them just this pick and tell them do this staircase to me, because obviously he's going to walk out, or he's going to charge a fortune for drawing the elements. So bear always that in mind, that the artisans, the manufacturers, you don't only pay them for the labor. You don't only pay for the material, you also pay for the effort in detailing it. So the more things, detailed things that you give them, mostly in terms of aesthetic, the less, the more, the easier that it will be for them to produce it, and for them to point out where there are flaws on the design and how they can be corrected. So, and this applies not only for metal, applies for timber, applies for glass, applies for stone, for everything. So you need to do your stuff, and you need to do it well. You cannot do, as I have seen in many drawings, you cannot pretend that you are drawing three straight lines and your stonemasons do a cornice out of it. You need to give them the full profile of the cornice. Otherwise, the stonemason is going to tell you, well, what do you want me to do? And they're going to charge you for that extra time. So bear that in mind. So we have done a little overview on indoor staircases for you to find inspiration. Probably, I don't know if you knew some of them. Obviously, some of you knew the Laurentian library, others you might not know it. So now you know it, and it's a bit of a glimpse of a star of the endless world of staircases. Any question about indoor staircases? Okay, so we continue with some examples of outdoor staircases. Obviously, in here, you know this one, don't you? Does anyone not know what this staircase is? Don't be shy if you don't know. So, but only those who don't know. If you know, you don't say anything. Don't be shy. If you don't know, I will just to talk about it or not. No, okay, fine. I'm very happy to see that all of you know. And okay, there is a comment here. You don't know. How is it? Okay, Christian, you ask how is the installation process for the cantilever ones? Okay, so normally you need to have a certain wall thickness, otherwise the cantilever itself won't work. So normally the minimum the cantilever staircase can be inserted into the wall is usually 1/5, but that will require a very good skilled stonemason and not a very long cantilever. So normally people say 1/3. So if you cantilever 1/3, be ready, because I mean, if your staircase is 1.2, then you need to insert it 40 centimeters. So your wall need to be at least 40 centimeters. So that's a bit the traditional way, no? And then you just put one step onto the other, and obviously, I mean, you will have a reinforcement, etc. And then, but once everything is boom connected from the top and the bottom, you take out all the support, and then the whole staircase will stay, because that's based. I mean, there is a physics behind it that explains you. I mean, and if you type into the internet structural calculations of cantilever staircase, you find a couple of essays in case you are interested. Normally, how do you prepare? What do you mean? How do you prepare the wall? You need to leave. You mean to leave? You need to leave the hole for the cantilever staircase, or maybe make a hole. No, you have your fabric, your load bearing wall, and then you make a hole there in brick, for example. No, and then you make a hole there to insert the piece of stone. That's normally how you do it in the block work. You either leave the space or or open the space. Normally, you do the other way around. You build the wall and then you make the hole to insert the stone. The reason is because you don't know when you're going to install the staircase, so it's better to leave the fabric in full than not in full. And then what happens nowadays as well is that for extra safety, you normally have at least two irons rods coming from the wall. And this is for situations in which you have you have a wide staircase and each piece of stone cannot enter into the wall as much as you want. Then there will be a additional metal support to sustain them. Then the metal also makes a little bit redundant the whole load bearing weight, because the metal is as well collaborating into the load bearing, but it is still necessary. And then there is a third type that can be done of cantilevering, in which maybe you only have support above and below. And that way, I mean, the traditionally it was done with a lot of good practice, and sometimes they were a bit unstable, etc. And the way they do it nowadays is that they perforate the staircase and they put pretensioned metals to support them, and then it's the metal itself what it is supporting the staircase, and yes, the stone is just a material to clad it on. So those are the types in which you do it. Normally you will need the assistance, not necessarily a structural engineer, but more important, the stonemason's a structural engineer. The stonemason will tell you what you need, because if you leave it to the hands of a structural engineer, you know how structural engineers are. I don't know if any of you is a structural engineer, but the problem is that structural engineers nowadays are only taught metal and concrete, and they think that the stone breaks, and because the stone breaks is not suitable for resistance, so they want to put reinforcement everywhere. So a structural engineer might ruin your cantilever staircase, and it's better to find, if you need the support, if you need extra, go to the stonemason and trust the stonemason. They know their trade, they know what they're doing, and they will know how to do it. Now, again, depending on the stonemason, you can trust them completely in giving the whole staircase, and they will design it for you. But it's always good to bring them an idea of what you want to get, and also be ready for the extra cost that might mean the structural engineer. The Yeah, I think that architects in general, because at least, I mean, at least my generation and other people, and by extension, at least in Spain, we are also responsible for the structural engineering. So we have to know, and because obviously we're also responsible for heritage, we know very well that the stone works, that the stone is a very good structural material, and bricks are a good structural material. But if the only thing that they have told you is concrete and steel, you have that issue. So coming back to our outdoor staircases, for those of you who said that you don't know what this is the Spanish steps in Rome. It's a, as you can see, it's a massive staircase built in 18th century to connect two levels of the city. So, which is what the area staircase does. But obviously, I mean, in this case, they wanted to create a full and interesting monumentality out of it. And if you analyze it, it's very simple. I mean, obviously, it has a movement, it has ups, down, and it has all the beautiful flowers. But once you analyze the architectural elements of it, there is not much on them. Some pilasters, and that's all. So also bear into consideration that you don't need to be extremely elaborate in your staircase to create some monumentality. The monumentality in this case comes from the shapes of the staircase. I couldn't stop I couldn't continue without talking about this. Has any of you seen this before? And if you have, do you know what it is? If
It's
you
a
don't,
well.
well, very good. Very good. So it's basically that. It's a massive well. It's a step well, as they are called in India. And basically it's just that. It's a massive well with steps to access from any point. Because we are not talking here about a round well of 1 meter or 2 meters diameter. We're talking here about a very, very massive element. So anyone entering from any point should be able to reach it. Another beautiful staircase that they wanted to bring is the Porto di Ripetta, the staircase in Rome, in the Porto de Ripetta, just a small river port, river just stop to move around the city, and you can. And I wanted to bring it because again, of all the movement, this is a proper Baroque creation, and you get this movement, this ups and down, and this and the beauty of it. I mean, I think I have a photo. Unfortunately, this staircase has disappeared at the beginning of the 20th century because when they started excavating around the mausoleum of Augustus, which is nearby, they discovered the Apaches and they needed a space to put their Apaches, and it was demolished. But we still have some pictures, some photographs from the late 19th century that is also telling us not only about the outer step but also the inner steps, creating a very, very interesting movement. And keeping the time and the distance, I wanted to bring this one. This is from the 1950s, done in the city of Algeciras in southern Spain. And it was done to connect the two levels of the city. The city sits on a hill, and the hill has a smooth access through all the points, except in the point that is connected to the sea, where there is a cliff. And that cliff needed to be solved, needed to be connected to allow an easy access from the main square to the harbor, and they came up with this idea. This is a mix of elements. You have like proper staircase on the two upper levels. So this step you access to steps, this level you access to steps, and then this level you access to a ramp. Create a small movement. It's not the most stunning staircase, but it has a very decent monumentality, and it was a decent connection between the 2 points. Unfortunately, the staircase, which was usually very well cared up until the 80s, from the 1990s onward, it's become just very degraded. It become a space where junkies will go, drug addicts, drug dealing. People will go there and pee. People will throw rubbish. The town hall wouldn't put any care on it, and eventually, unfortunately, it will be demolished in the early 2000s and substituted with a parking. The parking was declared illegal, and it was demolished. It has been demolished. Was started to be demolished at the beginning of the year, and now they're going to be something else. They don't know yet. They have opened a competition, but they have said that not necessarily rebuild the staircase. So I will keep you posted on what they do in here. In the same line, in the same idea of connecting two levels of cities that usually medieval cities were usually sitting on cliffs on a big difference of levels. This is called so-called the oval staircase in Teruel. Again, a very beautiful outdoor staircase connecting two levels of the city in a beautiful and monumental way. And obviously here we have this combination between rubble and brick that it's and the glazed tiles that is giving a very, very interesting chromatism, and at the same time with very humble material achieving a majestic result. Or this other one, very baroque, in the center of Madrid, and you might be surprised. This was done in 1955. To connect, you can see that there is a difference, big difference of level between the up and the down. And this was done in the 1950s precisely to connect the elements. It was done by architects who were part of the public service. So nowadays, I mean, we criticize many times the architects who work in the public service, but back then there was architects who really knew what they were doing and who could really have a sensitivity to design something that could connect the two parts of the city. Unfortunately, nowadays I think that most of the architects who work in the public service cannot design. Cannot. I mean, it's the statute of the public service prevents them to be the designer, so they need to bring someone else to design, which means that these people don't have, unless they have their own practices outside of the public service. I mean, what I mean, they cannot design as public servants. They can design as private practitioners. They if they don't design as private practitioners, they lose a sense of reality, and that's when you find this thing of telling you, oh, you cannot do this because the chart of Athens. You cannot do this because the chart of Venice. The chart of Athens and the chart of Venice, both of them have been superseded by the current legislation. And the current legislation allows you to do, for example, anastylosis, allows you to do a lot of things that then when you present it, they tell you no, because this, because this, because that. And that's because it's, as I said, it's a problem of interpretation. If you go from being brainwashed in a school of architecture to become a public servant, you will stay brainwashed all your life. Well, if you start practicing, it's your choice to remain brainwashed or not. And normally people became much more moderate in their approach because they realized that real life has to be much more moderate than the theoretical work of modernism. So it's food for thought. And to finalize this selection of staircases, I wanted to bring this one. Do you know where this is? Do you venture to know where this is? Where do you think it is?
Is that in Cusco?
Bingo! Of course, you had to know. Of course. So yes, this is the Church of San Francisco in Cusco, and I wanted to bring it because of this. This is a very interesting staircase, round in, round out, a very good point for people to connect and to gather. And I have been talking before about the Vatican palaces. I have been talking before about Bramante, and probably this staircase is one of the few practical, direct examples of inspiration from Bramante taken from Serlio. Because Serlio, when he talks about the works by Bramante, he talks about the staircase that Bramante did in the Belvedere, in what it is now the Cortile de la Piña. It was initially this staircase, half in, half out, and that Serlio commented that it was the most beautiful staircase he could have ever seen. Serlio is very verbal in his treatise. His treatise is very funny, and I encourage all of you to read it because it doesn't have the bullet point character that has Vignola. It doesn't have the obscurity that Palladio has, and doesn't have either the sort of snobbish attitude that Palladio has in his. So Sally is a bit more easygoing, and he tells you measure it, and if it doesn't work, you draw whatever you want. And this is very good, but if you can change it, you don't need to copy it completely. This is an inspiration, and bringing this for you to give you ideas. So he has a totally different attitude, and he's much more flexible than any of the others. So, and I wanted to, and the reason, of course, is because I have said it many times, and the classical architecture achieved its best, its finest examples in America, a land which was free of any precedent in most of the cases. Some of the precedents were wiped out. It has also to be said, but the the feeling that there was no precedent because the indigenous precedents were ignored, if not destroyed, allowed the architects to approach classical architecture from a completely different and more creative way. Yeah, no, I mean, tell that to them. No, I tell them. I mean, I was the other day in Oslo, and I was showing Manuel de Tolsa, and I was telling the Americans, you cannot understand McKim, Met, and White without Manuel de Tolsa and many other architects in New Spain and Peru. That architecture wouldn't be possible without these people. And the architect who did this staircase also proved that he was knowing. And look, nobody other than Bramante could do that staircase in Europe. It had to be in America, in Ecuador, in Quito, where no, sorry, Ricardo, this is Quito. This is not Cusco. Sorry. So the the architect brought something new, and at the same time continued a tradition without having witnessed it directly. So they didn't have the weight of the precedent. For them, all was as a language in which they could express, and that's what they want you to take from here: the extreme creativity of the classical architecture in the Spanish America, much more interesting than the Anglos, and it's been forgotten. It's always like noted as vernacular. Thank you very much. Bye. And no, it's fully neoclassical. It has to be vindicated, and sometimes for nationalistic interest, some people think that it's more usually for snobbery. They think that it's better to say that it's vernacular than classical. There is also fear of classicism because of colonization, because of 10 million things. And no, actually, this is proper classes. This is integrating into a timeless tradition for all people and for all nations, and shouldn't be done with any fear, the same way that they did. So that's what they wanted to conclude the part of the staircases with sort of inspiration, no? Because classical architecture appeared in Greece, Rome expands it, flourishes in Europe, thrives in America, and that's how I wanted to conclude with this beautiful and humble staircase in Quito that all of a sudden is talking us about the Cortile de la Piña in the Vatican. And probably the people who sit there, they're not, they might not be aware, but this is a much more stronger connection than any neo Tudor or neoclassical building in the United States, which again is telling us more about the deeper connections that the Spanish America had with with the continent, and the creativity of the architects. Some of them came from the metropole. They came from the metropole, but the state in the visa royalties and the state to make it a better place. I mean, you sometimes see some memes around, and you see Mexico in 1615, and you see the wonderful Zocalo Square with the cathedral, etc. And then you say New York in 1650, and you were just four houses. So bear also that in mind, that this was done, yeah, at the end of 16th century. Well, in the now proclaimed inheritors of neoclassicism, of the new classical style, new Palladian world, was nothing. And here we have Serlio, and that's what I always recommend people to read Serlio, to read Vignola. Palladio is amazing, don't get me wrong, but there is a classicism outside Palladio, which at the end of the day, it's very restrained. It's a bit like Vitruvius. Vitruvius writes his treatise to impress Augustus. Palladio writes his treatise to impress clients, while the others, Vignola, Serlio, and many the Rusconi, they wrote the treatises to teach people, and you can see that when you read them. Let's see, there were some questions, some comments here. Speech, yeah, there is. I mean, there is a lot that can be said, and I think that there is a big mea culpa in it's all the black legend. No, it's like the people who should promote this architecture don't want it, don't in those countries, don't want to promote it because they can be accused of colonialism, blah 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 blah. They prefer to talk about vernacular, while they don't realize that that's downgrading it. But it's a bit of a snobbery, and also comes because of the Americans say no, only the Palladian tradition is the true classical. All of you are just people, guates who don't know what they're doing, are just imitating us. Well, on the contrary, it was the other way around. The black legends about the conquistador has gained too much a bad reputation for the greatness of the Spanish. It is true. I mean, there is a massive black legend that is still going around, especially around the 12th of October. There is always something about it. And the thing is that finally, I think that in both sides of the Atlantic, they are realizing that no, that the black legend was a black legend that cannot be we cannot go back to the pink legend, which is what Spain did everything amazingly, etc. But what they did amazing was architecture. Both the criollos and the peninsulares did an amazing architecture. You go and you see what Manuel de Tolsa was doing in Mexico was incredible. It doesn't have any it better even better than Juan de Villanueva, which is a lot of people in Spain would just wow. I much when I started to realize about Manuel de Tolsa, or I don't remember the name, I think it was Pedro Perez or Miguel Perez, a Jesuit who was called the Mexican Vitruvius because he was an excellent commentary. He wrote about 50 books about architecture and nobody knows about him. And the only thing that he's remembered in Mexico is because he wrote a small booklet comparing the Roman baths with the Aztec baths. But he wrote 49 books more, which are equally interesting, and people just only focus on no because he talked about the Aztec. So it's also telling us a bit about the narrow mind that on both sides of the Atlantic we keep regarding the legacy, the influence, the impact that the Spanish conquista had over America, and we overestimate the Americans. And in terms of in architectural terms, it's the same. I mean, you see that a lot of people start designing in very Palladian, very Georgian style in areas that are not Georgian, are not Palladian, that should follow more a Vignola or Palladio structure. Yeah, I mean, that was something that cannot be denied. That was the epidemics, no? I mean, the Europeans in general brought a lot of epidemics that killed the American population. That's out of question. That the encomienda was bad. It had a very good intentions, but it was very, very badly implemented. And you're asking me about classical ramp examples. I think that's a bit more complicated because I mean you have them. I mean, but I think let's take a look at the bibliography, and then we keep discussing. So before we end, I wanted to bring you some tips on how to for designing a staircase. First of all, is following the regulation doesn't mean avoiding a staircase. No, don't think that because the regulations tell you a lot of things, because they tell a lot of things, that means that you can only do dog-leg staircase. No. Also, I mean, we live in BIM, Revit, you name it, and a lot of programs already have automatically generated the staircase, so in which you put all the data. You say, I want my staircase to be 4 meters tall. I want my stairs to be this. I want the landing here, etc. And then boom, that's a staircase. But those staircases are usually very ugly. And if you want to make them good looking, you end up doing a monster out of several fragments just to put it into the BIM model. I always say, computer says no is not an excuse. So if the computer cannot automatically make you a staircase, you draw it manually in AutoCAD, because AutoCAD also needs to be used manually. So bear that in mind. No, it's the same thing when they say, "Oh, hand drawings are much better than CAD drawings." I say, "Yeah, why? Because the person who does the hand drawing puts a lot of effort, and the person who does the CAD drawing doesn't put any effort." And the problem is that the person who does the CAD doesn't put any effort, because you need to put effort in your drawings to look good. So that's that's my conclusion. So computer says no is never an excuse. Next tip is closed stringers are better for concrete staircases because they're perfect to conceal everything. So if you put a closed stringer, You are concealing all the side of the concrete, and also it's allowing you for a better railing. And then cut stringers are better for timber or cantilevered stones. It's almost a shame, as the French do many times, to have a stringer around a cantilever staircase. No, it's better to have a stringer for the sorry, a cut stringer for the cantilever stone, and then for timber it's up to you, depending on how you want to design the railing. And then timber spindles normally are for timber staircases. I mean, if you put timber spindles in a metal staircase or timber spindle in a stone staircase, it's going to look very odd. Well, metal spindles will work very well anywhere. Also remember that the spindles have to be, the distance between two spindles must be a maximum of 10 centimeters amongst any two given elements. That means that if you want to copy all the designs, those old designs aren't going to comply with the regulation. Again, does it mean that the regulations are banning traditional design railings? No. That means that you need to redesign the traditional style railings to fit the regulations. And again, there is a creative process here that involves your creativity, your effort, not just the act of copying. So bear always that in mind. And then final one, avoid heavy stone balusters if the staircase is narrow, as we were saying at the beginning when you saw the beautiful staircase in the Royal Palace of Madrid. It's true that Blondel put a formula, but I think that nowadays that formula has been superseded. It's very close to the formulas that are told nowadays in the regulations, but you have to follow the regulations. I think it's like one riser plus two thread has to be around 62, no 63, and then that's the good one, which is very close to what Blondel was saying. And then it has to have an angle, I think it was 24 degrees. That's the two rules that they need to comply. But I think that nowadays, unfortunately, despite how good the rule it is, you need to follow the regulations. You need to follow your own country's regulation that will be very close to it. So that's my answer regarding to that, Lara. Sorry for not entering more into it, but the thing is that there is a lot of rules that we have from the past that were working very well, but because they have been superseded by the regulations, we need to embrace the regulations. I mean, there are people who are always very keen on ditching all the regulations, but I mean, I probably am a bit more conservative. Ditching the regulations is anarchy, and with anarchy comes a lot of problems. So let's take a quick look at the bibliography. So there are some books that I am recommending here for you to find inspiration on the design of staircases. The first one, which you may know from previous sessions because it's gold, is Elements of Form and Design in Classical Architecture by Arthur Stratton, which has an extremely big collection of staircases, mostly straight, some curves, for you to select and to find inspiration on. This one, a very eloquent name, Builder's Treasury of Staircases, is one of the first books in English to talk about staircases, how to design them, and some ideas. It's mostly centered in timber staircases. The reason is because the carpenters were much more open to try their secrets than the stonemasons. So that's why normally for the stonemasons you don't have much books, but for carpentry you have quite a lot. A similar one with from another author, which I recommend you to read any of his books, is Peter Nicholson. Peter Nicholson was a gentleman who was living in UK, in London at the end of 18th century, and from the 1790s to the 1830s, he wrote about 50 books of architecture and building construction. So one of the good things of this book of Nicholson's book in general is that they are showing a construction system, a constructive structure, a constructive concept, very similar to the one that we still keep today, or the one that would be considered by many craftsmen as their traditional trade. So using Nicholson is a good way of ensuring that your designs can be executed in a traditional way and can be well executed by traditional craftsmen, because the way traditional craftsmen ended up learning from the trade over the last 200 years was through books like Nicholson. And Nicholson set up with the massive amount of books he published, he set up a standard for Victorian England, and we are going to see also the French counterpart. But for the Anglo-Saxon world, the books of Nicholson are like a bit of a Bible, because every tradesman, every builder will build in a very similar way to what Nicholson is telling you, with some technological updates into consideration. This other one is more for inspiration and general design, English interior woodworks of the 16th, 17th, and 18th century. A wonderful book, very thick, full of details, and profiles and everything you need to do. It has a good section of staircases, but also paneling, cornices, furniture, rooms, etc. So it's very doors. It's quite interesting, and you can all these books you can access them at archive.org. So it's that for free for you to download them. The next one, and with this I think we're finishing the English series, this is more an historical account, the English staircase, an historical account, as the name says. It's very good because it has some drawings with a decent level of detail, but also has a lot. It's a book of history, basically, with a lot of detail. So this is how a proper book of history of architecture should be. So it's very recommendable because you have a lot of examples that you don't find so many in Nicholson or in the others. So it's showing you the big variety of designs, and then using this book you can also go and find more photographs on the internet. So it's very useful. Lara was asking about Blondel, so that's why I have to recommend the course of architecture of by Blondel, where he set up some rules, some ideas on how to design staircases, mostly obviously in the French way, but it's very useful if you want to design staircases that look more French, which is also the look that many people would expect from classical. No, we always have this little battle between English and French in terms of classical architecture. If it is the big neoclassical French tradition, which is by extension the European standard or continental European standard, or more the English Anglo-Saxon way of doing it. So, and again, this one you can download it from the internet. Equally usable and mostly the equivalent of Nicholson, but in France, is this big work by Charles Normand, who was it was the equivalent of Nicholson in France. Charles Normand wrote a massive amount of books on architecture, parallels, elevation sections. He was just a spreader of information. And one of his works, which I like the name because it's telling you everything about the book, is Le Vignol des Ouvriers, which means the vignola of the working man. And it's divided in several volumes, starting with orders, then construction, then many elements. And one of them is dedicated to staircases. So very interesting as well. I mean, you can see here, it's even a very primitive way of using cast iron on the staircases to support all the elements, timber, stone. So he's giving you quite a lot of information, and this is just only one of the plates. So it has around 50-60 plates plus the text. So very good to get information about how to design a different staircase that is not the typical Georgian cantilever. And this other one, I quite like it. You find from time to time quite a lot of them. And the important thing is the name. It's a staircase and elevator, staircase and lifts. We're talking about a modern book. We're talking about a book that's incorporating technology. and the technology that is incorporating is the lift. Also, many of these staircases across this book, they start being in concrete. They call them back then cement, or they are metal, because and these are the Haussmannian staircases. So this is not any palatial staircase. This is a staircase that you find in any building of Paris, any building of the Beaux-Arts tradition in any part of France. So the collection of plates from here, it can be of a lot of interest for anyone wanted to design a staircase. I mean, unfortunately nowadays, the most of the lifts, or not to say all the lifts, all the commercial lifts are very standardized, and there is very little space for any type of enhancement, of embellishment. You also need to consider to consider the usage that needs to be for heavy use. It's not like when you design a lift for a private house, as I have done many. Uh, you can do it in paneling, you can do it with a seat, you can do it with eglomise mirrors, you can do it in glass moldings, you can do whatever you want, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the client and the family to use it. But in a neighborhood building, you need to be sturdy in doing them. And unfortunately, the models are too sturdy, too ugly. So I gave my recommendation when you are doing buildings of this type is have the lift hidden, they are showing as little as possible, because they are what they are. So you need to find a way of integrating them. So you cannot just say that because the lift is ugly, you're just putting an ugly thing. You will need to find ways of integrating. You will need to dialogue with the lead manufacturer, because it's very important to have a dialogue with the lead manufacturer to see to which level you're going to, you can personalize and you can add some sort of embellishment to the lift. Because again, lifts are not something that you go to the shop and you buy one lift and then you take it to the site. The lifts are made by order. They have standard dimensions, yeah, but they are made by order. So there is always a space for some sort of bespoke character. So always try to use it. And last but not least, I think that this will be, I mean, I brought it for the last. It's very humble book, but I think it's very useful, because this is, I mean, this is from a company, Morgan Company. Morgan Company did in the 20th century what Nicholson and Normand were doing in the 19th century, together with Hodgson. They published a lot of books selling their stuff. It was the era of buying things by catalog. So they were selling a staircase by catalog, they were selling a lot of elements, and the books give you a little guide about how to design a staircase. And obviously, if you adapt the tips that they give you in this book to the regulations, you have a perfect way of designing a good staircase. And I'm saying this because, again, most of the staircases, they have to be made by measure. You don't go to a supermarket or to a depot and buy a staircase. You need to design it. You need to buy it. So for many domestic staircase, I think that this book is a good guidance. Also because many domestic staircase are in timber, so I think that you will find this one very useful. And finally, if you need metal spindles and you want to go from something that is not the typical straight balusters, or even worse, the glazed baluster, this company Julius Blooms operates internationally and has a very good catalog of any element you can imagine for metalworks. And you can download the DWGs for free. So that means that you can use what Julius Bloom has into their collection and then go to a local metal worker, because again, you don't buy your your staircase railing off the shelf. It has to be made for you. So you always have a degree of personalization, and always talk with your manufacturers. Don't think that because you have been told that nobody does it anymore, I'm sure that they will do. So always bear that in mind. They cannot, but you can't. Or they tell you that nobody does it, but people does it. There are everywhere metal workers. And one of the reasons why there are everywhere metal workers is it's the same where a similar reason to why there are always stonemasons everywhere. There are stonemasons everywhere because people die and people need a plate in their tombs. There are always people who know how to use the stone. And for metal, all the concrete iron frames, steel frames, steel rod frames, are done manually by a metal worker. So that metal worker probably had a foundry or a small workshop where they do that. I'm talking about average construction, not about massive construction where they will have in-house people who will do it. So bear that in mind. Go to Julius Bloom, select the beautiful stuff. Don't go to tacky. Don't go for the vines or the roses because that requires much more skills to be produced. Requires a mold, etc. But elements like these two ones or this one, they can be easily crafted. Any question about the bibliography? Nowadays, many people in education think that open space shafts connecting different levels in a staircase is a lot of space and therefore should be avoided, or they want an elevator in that space. I mean, I think it depends. A space is valuable, and if you are talking me about a residential building, we need to add another problem, which is the fire regulation. So, if you are doing a residential building, several people living in different flats, that staircase needs to be protected. Therefore, that staircase has to be actually a functional staircase that is enclosed and set apart in a protected environment. And that's normally like a two flights staircase. If you're working in a house where you can have more freedom, you can have more drama with the staircase, as Christian was saying a moment ago, no finding the drama. I think that my answer would be that it depends. It depends on how much space you can afford to waste. There is a space that are a waste of space. But some space with a function is just to be a transition space, a, a space. And the staircases are that sort of things. Depending again on the size of your project. If you're working on a town site, on a town plot that is very small, you cannot have a Versailles staircase. You cannot. You cannot have the Bramante staircase. You cannot, period. It has to be as small as possible, as functional as possible, and as pretty as possible. But I think that per se, as a rule for all, I disagree. And also, as I said, I mean, with current regulations, you cannot have a lift in that lost space around the staircase unless you have a secondary staircase to be used as a fire staircase. And in that case, you are losing a lot of space. So it can be a waste of space, but at the same time, I mean, I find sometimes funny this statement that you are making, Nicolaus, because the only remaining thing that modernism has and that educators in modernism have to mold the space is the space. If we if your professors they're moving to do functional spaces, we're back to the Khrushchevska and the Brezhnevska and the official protection housing in Spain in the 60s, etc., and the council houses in UK. You cannot design. I remember I had a professor who used to tell me that you cannot design with a calculator. You need to design with a pencil. So sometimes that lost space might have a meaning, but you need to ensure that the meaning is meaningful. So it's if you are working on a residential building, the staircase is a bit of is a bit of a nuisance. Why? Because people will normally use the lift. People living from second floor up, they will use the lift. So very few people will use a staircase. So do you need them? I mean, before in the past they were very important because lifts were expensive. Sometimes not even everyone could use the lift. They were very slow. So you would only use the lift if you are carrying a lot of weight or if you are elderly. If not, you would use the staircase because it actually will be quicker. I mean, having living in buildings where and having in buildings as well where the lift was so slow that it was easier to go up and down by feet. But yeah, I mean, I would say that it's not necessarily a lost space, and it will have to be analyzed in a case by case scenario. And I would say that in a residential building, it might be a lost space. I mean, a condominium, a shared residential building, while in a single family building, it doesn't have to be a lost space. It's just a space. I don't know if this answers your question.
Yes, I've been talking. Actually, I had a university project
Uh huh.
where we had to design a building for living,
Uh huh.
and so at first I thought about in Vienna we have those so-called Gründerzeit buildings from the 1860s onwards,
Yeah.
which have high ceilings, kind of representative um, staircases as well.
Yeah.
And it's always, if you enter such a building, it's so nice to just walk the stairs, even if it's 3 to 4 floors, because it's just kind of elevating going there. You have a big, sometimes depending on the building, you have a big or a smaller open space going through all the floors,
Yeah.
and it's so for that university project, I wanted to do something similar, like have high ceilings, and then they told us to, well, you're not if you can build one floor more, you're not allowed to have such high ceilings. Because I don't know why, but from an investor's point of view, it's one floor more is like 4 flats more, so it's more money.
Yeah, I think that you have touched the point. I think that the problem is that it's a problem of general culture of between investors, developers, etc. So the developer will all and also the clients not being educated. It's a mix of everything. So in the past, yeah, you would have those high ceilings, but you are not going to have those high ceilings in the upper floor. You would have a very tall ceiling in the first floor, the piano nobile, or where the rich family, the aristocrat would live. In the second floor, where is the rich merchant would live, the ceilings would be a little smaller. And maybe instead of being one flat, there are two. And then you go to the third floor, and then in the third floor, you just leave the well-off shop owner. And then maybe there are four flats and the ceiling is smaller. And then in the fourth floor is just the attic under the roof, and there is where the servants live, like fishes in a tin. No, whatever there is a space, there would be a squeeze there. So that was the general idea. No, you are paying more for getting more space. No, but I think that nowadays there is a lot of that culture has been a bit lost, and people don't care because people are used to living in very short roofs because the modular that you could have be able to reach the ceiling with your hands. God knows where Le Corbusier got that idea. But obviously the speculators and the developers just move the hand and say money, money. And that's a bit of the problem that now it's the standard investment. No, 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 no. You have to maximize the profit because now it's not anymore about delivering a good quality product. It's more about earning as much money as possible with the minimum effort. So and that's part of and the problem is that now we're reaching to a point in which the luxury itself is losing its sense because people are starting to realize that they're paying millions of euros for flats that 30 years ago would have costed just hundreds of thousands or thousands. So and they are realizing of this speculative thing, and people travel and people see and people realize that you need more space. So I mean, I am a bit surprised that at uni they're telling you that. I mean, when I was a student, they would tell me the same, but then they would tell me, okay, do it now. You have the time to design it as you want, because later on you won't be able to. So you have this issue with the heights now. The problem comes as well because in order to avoid massive speculation and super tall buildings, there is a cap on the overall height. So before there was no cap on the height because if you don't have a lift, you normally stay to no more than 6 floors. 6 floors is too uncomfortable to go up and down, even for servants. So that's what you have in all big cities, in Haussmannian cities, etc. Is 5 floors, 6 maximum. Then the lift comes, and then boom, everything can go up. And then it's when they realize that you can just get blocked by taller and taller buildings when you put a cap on the height. And that is actually when they start saying, okay, now I need to get as much housing as possible. That's the problem, no? Because in pre-war, in pre-war, pre-First World War, where there wouldn't be not so many buildings would have a lift, you would design the floors in that way, and you would expect that the people who will go to the first floor will pay more. Now we have the inverse situation, no? The people who go to the lower floors, they will pay less than the people who will live in the penthouse, in the attic. But there is always, I mean, if you can, the problem sometimes is that the developers can be a bit stubborn. No, they have their mind made. Some of them don't come from luxury; they come from middle class their development, and from middle class, and then they think that yeah, a 2.5 meter is okay. Yeah, a middle class would accept 2.5 meter, would consider 3 a luxury, but upper classes would think that 3 meters is for the staff, and we start talking from 4 meter onwards. No, in the Middle East, the standard is 5 meters. In the ground floor, 4 meters. In the first floor, minimum, excluding all the services. So the actual height is more. So in 10 meters, you have 2 floors. So it's a bit that I would say that there is some truth on that, but the truth doesn't come from any modernistic assessment. Comes from pure speculation. And that professor was teaching you how to speculate and how to create ugly buildings by speculating, because also the developers welcomed modernism because they said, oh God, now we don't need to spend money on decoration. Now we don't need to spend money on anything. We can just sell white boxes. So imagine you have a business, no, and then you always offer a good quality product, expensive, good quality, and heavily ornated. And they tell you that you can sell trash. So imagine, for example, let's put this example. I always like comparing all this with haute couture. You are a haute couture atelier. You design dresses for the rich, for the higher classes, and then all of a sudden you realize that if you sell these upper class ladies t-shirts from Temu, it's not anymore Primark, it's from Temu or from Shein, they're going to still pay you a fortune, even if they're from Shein. What would you do? Would you keep doing your very elaborate dresses, or would you start selling t-shirts from Shein and then doing something else? Obviously, if you are ethical, you would keep doing things the right way. But if you're not ethical, you would start buying things in Shein and then selling them. So that's a bit what your professor was telling you. Like, don't be a haute couture. Don't be any more pret-a-porter. Just buy from Shein. That's what telling you.
Yeah, but I think the problem is I thought that universities there's some freedom of thinking, and that's absolutely not there anymore.
And you are the one who said nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, Nicolaus. Now is my time to give you back. Nobody expects Spanish Inquisition at university.
Yeah.
I would say what I realized from my Passport University is that it's a place of free speech as far as you think the same as your professors.
Yeah.
You are free to think as to match your thinking as your professor, and if not, you're free to shut up. That was my experience. I could find professor whom I could talk with a lot, and professor whom I couldn't talk at all, and professor who would say, I will talk to you outside uni, but I cannot share these thoughts while exercising as a professor. No, I remember I had teacher who told me that. No, yeah, no, I do that in my private practice, but not here. There is this thing in the schools of architecture. I mean, I think it's not as exaggerated as in other places, but in the school of architecture, you have this modernism by default, and you cannot do any other thing but modernism. So I think it's you have that you are free. I mean, I remember I always say this. I mean, I had a professor who, I mean, we were several people in the class. No? We were all about 40 students, each one with a different type of project. And this professor was encouraging us always to bring the designs by hand, especially at the very early stages. He wanted us to draw by hand because he was saying, and I think he was right, that drawing by hand will realize about the mistakes of the building. No? If you start drawing in CAD, you very quickly start onto the toilets, and then you forget about the staircase, or you forget about we were designing. I think it was a library. It was a library and auditorium, like a cultural building for a small village. And I remember that there was one student that was obsessed with Stephen Hall. So you remember that in Oslo we gave the award to that horrible building by Stephen Hall? That building was this student's favorite building. He was all day talking about this building. All day talking. Everything was about the Stephen Hall and this building. I remember even one day the professor made us do an exposition, a research and talk about a building. And knowing that this guy would select a building from Stephen Hall, he selected the building from us. No? So I remember my building was from this Dutch guy's MVRDB, and I think he had the same building that I had. We were having there were 5 buildings only for everyone, and then we had to give like own interpretation. So everyone, yeah, this building, that. This guy comes, steps in, and say, MVRDB are a Dutch company. They design buildings that sometimes are based in fractals, like Stephen Hall in this building. And then he continued the whole exhibition talking about the Stephen Hall. Anyway, what I wanted to say is that the professor still was mesmerized because all him was modernism. He had a lot of he was very cultured on modernism, if you know, in contemporary modernism of the early 2000s. But he was talking, never drawing. Yeah, because I have been reading about the Steve. It was always about the Stephen Hall, about the Stephen Hall and the fractals, and I want to do fractals, and I want to do this. And you were seeing his sketches; they were just nothing. Alvaro Siza, that's much better. You have seen drawings by Alvaro Siza, just 3 lines. Anyway, I remember I brought like quite a decent floor plan, modernist. But the professor didn't like it because it was lacking spatial capabilities. Precisely. And then I remember he said, like in front of everyone, it is a shame because I remember we were like around 5 or 6, which we were always presenting things he didn't like us. And you could see, I mean, he was like very, he was like, who wants to correct? And if one of us was raising the hand, he would say, anyone else wants to correct? So he wouldn't like to sit with us. And then I remember, I mean, I presented him the drawing, and he started criticizing and say, it is a shame that those who draw don't think, and those who think don't draw. So and he wanted it was, you could feel how unfair it was, because he was trying to praise and to promote that student who wasn't doing enough. And then I remember, I mean, I didn't pass the subject, and we had a review, and we had a public review, all of us. And then all of us, those excepting this guy, this guy also failed. And we had like a speech, like a very, very angry mom or angry dad speech to us. We were the worst, we were useless, we deserve what it had happened to us. We need to improve. If it was for him, he wouldn't even have allowed us to come into the School of Architecture. That was fourth year. So this is not first year, it was fourth year. So it's hard to hear that. You are always on time to change careers. And then he said with him, "What happened to you? Why didn't you progress? You had all the material. I guided you a lot." And we were all like, "Come on, you are telling us that you were shutting up with our project, and you were telling this guy what to do." So next year, we were in the same class with this guy, but we were with a completely different professor. A complete bastard, but he was a bastard with everyone, so that was good. So he brings first day, brings the project. You bring a project that you like, blah 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 blah, and then he starts drawing. He starts the drawing, and again, because it was from a workshop where we had to draw by hand. I mean, in Sevilla there were, I think, up to A, B, C, D, E, F, 5 workshops or 6 back then in the early 2000s, and each of them was onto one thing. No, I remember this one was a lot. There were some of them were a lot into hand drawing, some of them were a lot into models, and some of them were more into cut, which back then it was a big thing. And I remember that the year after, this guy told him, "Look, either you start drawing or don't come anymore to class. I mean, you are here to draw, not to talk. If you want to talk, you go to philosophy." So it depends a lot on the professor. No, I mean, that was my experience, and I don't think that has changed much. I think on the contrary, it had gone worse with many things. So I think that the freedom comes actually when you when you leave university, which is when you can design whatever you want. You are very welcome, Ricardo. See you soon. See you on Saturday.
Bye.
Bye bye, Ricardo.
Thanks for your yeah,
That's that
for
that, that
talk.
that that was my insight, and I think that it hasn't changed and doesn't have to change. I mean, I think that I always say the same: get your title and run. Get your title and run, because the schools of architecture, they are a bit of the I mean, and I remember as well in Spain, they were like a mafia. You had the people at workshop design, and you had the rest, and they were behaving like little tyrants, whimsical tyrants. In the sense that it was like, okay, the deadline is on the 10th of October to say something, and you were telling them, "Oh, but the 10th of October we had an exam of mathematics." Okay, fine. Then now you have to choose if you want to examine yourself on mathematics, or you want to change to do the deadline. And then the day after, probably the professor of mathematics would come and say, "By the way, we're doing the exam on the 12th." The only ones who were stopping them were the professors of urbanism, and there was always a big battle. And you had to pick your side. Either you were on the side of the urbanism, or you were on the side of workshop. But if you were in a course in which the professor of workshop design was at very odds with urbanism, they would put the deadlines on the same day, which was illegal. You cannot have two deadlines or two exams on the same day, according to the University of Sevilla. They would still do it to make you choose. They were horrible on that sense, and I think that some things, from what I hear from younger people, some things have changed, some things haven't. Oh, very interesting, Lara. I want to hear more. Maybe next time you come and talk us about what you think about Kevin Lynch, which is a very interesting book, by the way, and I recommend everyone to read it. The book, The Image of the City, by Kevin Lynch. It's a bit interesting. It's interesting. I would I still prefer the American the American Vitruvius, Camilo Sitte, the Stadenbau, etc., rather than going to Kevin Lynch. But Kevin Lynch is interesting. I remember having done an analysis of the city of Sevilla using Kevin Lynch back then when it was a graphic analysis. So it's interesting. It's interesting. So I want to know more. Please, next week maybe you talk a little bit to us about that. Okay. So see you soon. I mean, I'm going to wrap up because I think that people had other commitments. So I mean, I'm going to make some announcements, and also you also can share it in the video. You are still on time, very very little, only 2 days to submit your design for the drawing competition at la table ronde. Please do. You will be surprised. I have a lot of very interesting prizes. There is this new competition in Netherlands for the alternative train station. Again, you still have a lot of time. Find information about it on the Architectural Prize in Netherlands, or us through the WhatsApp groups about it, and we will share more information. It has very good prices, and as again, I mean, these things are for all these competitions are more for you to develop a portfolio of real counter proposal, not just you doing things. And also they help the general movement to create awareness within the public, showing that also that architects and students are also keen on designing something traditional looking. If you want to know about urbanism, and Lara was talking a moment ago about Kevin Lynch at the city, the Creative Street Foundation still has some positions for his summer school in 2025. It's in July. Please go. Nicholas Boyce Smith is a wonderful person, and all his team. You will learn a lot from them because they're also doing quite a lot of things for reshaping the architecture and urbanism of UK. Continuing with that, the Aesthetic City and Inbound Germany are holding an urban design competition for designing a dream square for the Berlin region, where you are free to design. Here are the rules. I mean, this has been shared in the group, but I'm announcing it for those of you who may want to know more. And if you want to know more, just text me about it and I will send you the information. And it's a good price. It's quite a good price. And you'll see. I mean, you can see that it's quite a juicy price. We might have some additional prices. We might sponsor some of the prices. This is more for debate. I don't know if some of you want to debate it or not. We can keep it for the next week. There is a building in London that is going to be rebuilt close to the monument to the fire of London. Maybe some of you don't know, in 1666, the whole city of London was destroyed by a fire, and a monument was erected to commemorate it. A lot of the buildings around, most of the buildings around have disappeared, only the column has stayed. And this building that you see here is going to be refurbished. This building, this what you see to the left, is what the building that was there originally. Unfortunately, that building isn't coming back. And what they are doing is just adding one floor more, keeping the little turret and adding a floor. And if the original building was quite this is a postmodern building from the 80s. If the original postmodern building was lacking on details, the new building is going to lack even more on the details, and you can have a say if you want. So if you want to oppose to it because it's actually destroying the cityscape of London, despite not being a very aggressive intervention on itself, it's like a lesser problem, but it's still a problem. And as you normally say, and much more, follow your local chapter of Inbound, subscribe to us to the Classic Planning Institute for more information, join us in the Academy if you are interested. We're starting the 30th of October. We would love to have you. And if, as I was speaking, Ricardo, actually, who was here earlier today, he's with us in the Academy, and some of you may know him as well personally. He's a wonderful person, and like you can see some of them. I mean, this is what you will see from the class. This is what you see. This is what I teach. These are my drawings used when I am teaching. As you can see, they're full of notes but this is what you will learn how to draw. You will learn how to draw the orders, and you will learn the application of the orders to design things like these beautiful drawings. And stay tuned because new drawings are coming at the end of the summer. We will show them to you when we come back in the new season in September. But we still have a little bit for that. We still have 4 seasons to conclude these 4 sessions to conclude this season of the sala of the salon. We will prepare by probably we wanted to do it end of July. We will probably have to wait until September once the students have finished the second exercise. But there will be an online exhibition that will be probably the beginning of the salon. It will be held on a Thursday probably, but it will be in the new season for the salon. And yeah, stay tuned because you will see all the students' work. They will expose their work, and they will have a critique on a public jury. And our next session is on the 31st of May, where we will be talking about bathrooms and kitchens. And usually, as you know, you can bring your project for a free critique, not only by me, but all of you are invited to make a critique on the project. And that's all. I mean, as you know, I mean, we have only 3 more sessions to go: kitchens, Gothic, and landscape. After that, we will make a summer break, but I will still be available by email for anything that you need and for private conversation. We might or may not host a extraordinary session during summer if there is enough interest, and we will talk about that the last day. And if not, we will come back in September. But still, I will see you on the 31st if you don't have any further comment. So, do you have any more comments? Anything you would like to say, to discuss, to ask? Something you would like to know? A staircase that you think should have been in this presentation?
Do you know about the staircase of Saint Joseph?
Where? In Vienna?
No, 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 not in Vienna, in America somewhere.
You mean
It's
the one that is done in one single piece?
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard of it. I have seen images of it. It's a wonderful work of craft. But
Because
yeah,
I wonder how it works.
let's take a look. I mean, it's a single piece staircase, no? It's just all made on a. Okay, Nicole, see you soon. It's been a pleasure to have you here. I mean, is this a single? Okay, so it says. Ah, no, it's not a single piece. It's just supported with wooden pegs and a double. Yeah, it was done by an extremely skilled carpenter, but I mean, we can go for assuming that Saint Joseph himself did it. But if we want to go for a more human explanation, it was extremely skilled carpenter who probably did it as a sort of ex voto, a sort of piety act, if you know what I mean. So to me, I mean, from what I recall having read about it, it is strange but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
It's bold. It's a bold design. It's probably someone who had been doing a stair, who knew a lot about building a staircase, knew a lot about boot joints, and probably wanted to challenge himself or herself themselves and do something innovative, an innovative design, and challenge technically. But you could perfectly do a big structure without using nails. Not using nails is not a signal that the structure isn't going to work. Actually, the wooden pegs work almost as nails, so it's fixing points. So actually, in some cases, for example, when you're building big trusses, you might use some nails, but they work with wooden pegs.
Hmm.
So actually, wooden
Nice.
pegs are better because they're all wooden. They are not the metal is something alien to the timber. So it works better because everything is part of the same thing. No, it's a bit like when you have a big wound, very, 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 very big, and they have to take a skin from some part of your body to cover that wound. That happens sometimes. It has to be very, very severe accident, but it happens. That's much better than leaving the wound open or to try to do something else, no? So it's better to close it somehow. I'm talking about extreme cases, like when you get heavily electrocuted, that basically you're burnt on the inside and things like that.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, it's a lovely, interesting
It's
staircase. But I
I
mean,
think it's very different than many other staircases and the way it supports itself.
yeah, it's
It's
but
very interesting.
it's I mean, what I don't know. I mean, someone will have to analyze it. That it's a cantilever staircase that has a good support at the top, and then the loads are majestically transmitted to the bottom.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, who could do that? I mean, Gaudi could do things that nobody could have explained. He could make an use of the stone that nobody had done before. Why? Because he knew the stone better than anyone. So that's exactly this carpenter probably knew timber better than anyone, knew how to take the extreme to
Yeah.
the timber. I mean, how? I don't know. But because I am not a timber carpenter, but I'm sure if you speak with these guys from Le Compagnon of timber masons, they will know for sure. They will probably do one for you. So that's what I would say about that, no? Because I mean it's the same thing when people see a cantilever stone staircase and they say, yeah, but that's how it works. There could be an option in which there is metal in the inside, but I don't think so. Because if there was metal at this without any maintenance, as it hasn't had any internal maintenance, at this stage the metal would have corroded and would start appearing. So I don't think there is metal in the inside.
Yeah.
Or there could be like a one explanation, but I doubt there was metal in the inside.
I think it's not. I think they analyzed it.
I let's see. Explained. It says he explained. The staircase is supported by an inner boot stringer. Okay. So then it makes sense. Yeah, if there is an inner, yeah, probably is that is an inner boot string. Yeah, if it is an inner boot stringer, that's what is supporting the whole thing. But yeah, it's a good transmissions of load majestically done. And very good timber as well. That's the main reason I can. I mean, yeah, there is a It's an, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm going to put in the chat one analysis that I have found, but
I've put the picture in the chat so everybody
yeah,
knows what we're talking about.
and there is there an analysis of the inside.
Ah, nice. Thank you. It's great. Wow.
I think that the problem as well that this staircase is telling us that, because all there is always like all these, how did they do it? I mean, I think that it comes. I mean, obviously, I mean the poor nuns didn't have to. They were nuns, not carpenters. But I think that nowadays we always feel suspicious or mesmerized by all these structures because we have lost the capacity of understanding how they were built, because we don't build anymore like that. And then when they come and say it was the aliens, it was this, it was that, they use some refractory concrete that then it's blah blah. No, I mean, it's like people knew how to do stuff, people knew the materials, people knew the structures, and the fact that nowadays you go to an engineer who doesn't know how timber works, doesn't allow you to that. It's the same thing as you can get Michelin star chef who has the most prestigious restaurant in the world, but then maybe it's unable to do a children's menu. And then would you conclude that then children are unfeedable because Michelin star people cannot feed them? No, it means that Michelin star people don't know how to feed children because their specialty is other. So you have asked the wrong person. If you ask a mother of children, she will know what the children like. So you find that a lot, no? The specialists, and you say, yeah, you have built the Golden Gate, but you haven't built any staircase. So you are not a specialist in this field. So that's a bit the problem, no? That if you ask people who don't know the trade, that's what happens. But very very interesting topic.
Oh, yes.
Any more questions?
I don't want to take more of your precious time, Pablo. Here, thank you very much for this lovely presentation. I have to. I think I have two quick questions,
Yeah,
maybe.
sure.
One is I was mesmerized by the double staircase in grass that we were discussing in the WhatsApp group
Yes.
recently, and the question that is, how do you organize your photos? How do you manage your, like, you're so quick in responding with the perfect image to the question. Like, how do you get access to? Do you have a special folder system that you
I don't.
use
I
on your
don't.
hard drive for
I have
anything?
I have my memory.
You have your memory.
I have my memory.
That's impressive.
And I know what I have to look, but I don't. I used to have. I used to have a photograph collection, but and I still have it, but I don't use it anymore. Is because
Okay.
because if you know the question, I think it's important to know how to look things in Google. I mean, I think that we have the problem now that you may have read this term, ancientification, or that Google is getting worse and worse on purpose. Because, for example, I mean, if you look for the Spanish steps in Rome, before you could get the best photographs. Now you get the pictures that are in the websites that are selling you trips to Rome. So why? Because they're prioritizing the people who are advertising stuff. So it has lost quite a lot. But I mean, to be honest, it's mostly by memory. I mean, I don't have pictures saved. I mean,
Okay.
I might share pictures that I take here and there, but those are pictures that I take and are kept in my phone, personal pictures. But most of the ones when we start like a chat group or a chat in the group and we start putting pictures, normally it's me looking them on Google and then relying, okay, I have seen this, I remember having seen this, I remember having seen that. And then some of them appear directly. One page that I have realized that is working very well and didn't used to work well at all, but now it's performing quite well, is Pinterest.
Hmm.
Why?
Mhm.
Because I think that the algorithm, the before Pinterest was, I would say that Google is what Pinterest was, and Pinterest is becoming what Google was. In the sense that you were entering before in Pinterest, and it was all about selling you something. Everything was about a commercial page, about a furniture, about clothes, about the decorative items, things that you could buy now. And I think that over the time, as more people have been using it, it has become interesting source of inspiration because I think that it's probably a mix of algorithm and AI. Because imagine you enter into Pinterest and you find just to get something very specific, St. Joseph staircase that Nicolaus was mentioning, and then you start getting pictures of that. But then if you scroll down, you start seeing pictures of a spiral staircase in timber. And then if you scroll down, they might become a timber staircase, or they might become metal spindles. So it is becoming quite interesting. And then if you keep searching and using it, you start getting interesting emails from Pinterest telling you, oh, you have a good taste. And then you get a random selection of images based on what you have been looking before. And you say, actually, I like that. And then you enter and then you see more stuff. So it's very interesting. So I would
Right.
encourage everyone to use Pinterest more than, and it was, if you tell me 3 years ago, I would say, don't go to Pinterest. It's horrible. But nowadays, it's becoming much better than Google. In Google, you need to be very specific. You need to look a lot. You need to scroll down a lot. Wikipedia is another good source. So you enter into Wikipedia and then you can move from one to another. And the good thing is that when you speak different languages, as you do, you can check the different versions of Wikipedia because the images in the Wikipedia in English might be different to the image in the Wikipedia in German.
Mm, I see.
And then you have at the bottom of each Wikipedia article, you have the Wikimedia images, selection of images, and that has all the images that everyone is using for all the articles in all the languages. So I
Okay.
would recommend you always when you look for things in Wikipedia to look as much versions as languages you speak, and on top of that, minimum. So I would say the five ones that I mean, it's not that I speak the five of them because I don't. I check it. Yeah, well, four actually. First source in English, second Spanish, third Italian, fourth French. And I don't speak Italian or French, but I check it because images can be different, and maybe the Italian person or the French person who wrote the article used a reference that the English person who wrote the article didn't.
I
So you
see.
go to the bottom to the bibliography, and then that start getting you to different things. And the good thing is, I think that before you could train your Google algorithm, not anymore, but you can still train your Pinterest algorithm,
Hmm.
and it's relative. It changes quite a lot because, for example, I mean, I was recently, I mean, I use it a lot at work, so in my case, it changes. If I am looking today for uh, I don't know, star cases, then I get the famous email with the star cases. But then when I get the star case, I'm like, you're not actually looking for Windows. So, but then they know about what you're looking for, and then eventually, after a while, you start seeing things as if they knew you. So they know what you like, and then you start getting things that get closer to what you like. It's a little bit. I mean, on Instagram you can get that a little bit as well in the reels when you click on the lens image, you get things that you like. But yeah, I mean, with Google it's mad. But normally, to be honest, it's things that come to my mind, and I just find them in Google, click share on WhatsApp, and that's how I share them. If I am in the computer, I would just copy and paste.
Fascinating, fascinating. I have another question on a rather different topic. This is the first time for me joining the Saloon.
Yes.
Normally, after this lecture, there's some kind of review or critique on project presentations, or how does it work?
Normally is, I mean, during the session, we have a review of projects. You can bring your projects, and when I stopped, I would say that after normally, I mean, you have seen that I have done the talk, we have debated a bit, and then I have done the bibliography. So after the bibliography is when the critique comes.
Okay.
And then we do the critique, you bring your project, and then we talk about it, and then just to close up, I do all the announcements.
But if the project is about one of the competition and counter proposals that you mentioned today,
It is the station, I cannot do anything.
you can't do
I
anything.
can't do anything because I am part of the jury. So
Yes.
for
Okay.
the German one, by now I don't think I am part of the jury. I will need to ask Bart. But for the German one, unless they tell me no, I am happy to have to do private reviews.
But those would be private and not part of the salon.
I think so. I mean, for the competitions, I am happy to do private, but yeah, I mean, I would like them to do on the salon, but I think that also, but maybe the organizers might not like it, so they can be private, and as a private thing between you and me, it's not something of the salon. It's something between you and me that you're asking me to, as a friend, to take a look at. But
In that case,
the one for the station, I can't because I'm part of the jury.
yes, okay, understand. In that case, as a friend, I might forward you an email
Yes, send me
one
an
day
email,
in the future,
and then
maybe
we have a chat about
might
it.
have a chat. That would be lovely. Thank you so much for your insights. This was amazing.
Normally, I mean, yeah, I mean, normally, I mean, for all the proposals, I mean, you will see that, I mean, this will be uploaded. It will be uploaded to a sync folder, and then my colleague Alvaro will probably end up uploading it on YouTube as well. So we will get them, but you can see all the others, and then you can see there are people who bring projects, and some people have been bringing the project for a while, and then the project has been finished. Sometimes are realistic projects, sometimes are imaginary projects. I think that when we started in September, we started with people, we wanted to do it like people bringing their own exercise to do an exercise, but what we realized is that people were at different levels, and there were people who knew what they were doing, and other people who he needed a lot of training. So we and then that very quickly moved into people bringing their own projects, which was much more interesting. To if you, I mean, especially there was some of them. I mean, Christian we were reviewing for some time one of the projects. We have another Francisco. He brings a wonderful project he's doing in Bogota, and I'm looking forward to see it because I saw it on Instagram today and he has changed it. So I'm looking forward for him to come probably in 2 weeks and tell us how the project has evolved.
I would love to see that.
Yeah. Come on the 31st, and then I will share you the link to see all the previous ones.
All right. Yeah, yes, please. Since they recorded, there might be a chance to see them in hindsight.
Record the ones in last autumn because I don't know, we should have done it, but we didn't. But we decided to record these 12 ones, and we will record the next one. So we will make a stop in summer because I'm going to be in the different summer schools, and then we will do a short series of salons up until the end of the year, and then we will start with a longer program in January next year. It won't be the same as this year. It will be something else. I don't know what we will decide. But yeah, we will probably, what we will do, and I need to try to get a book that is unpublished. It is in the VNA. I need to scan it, and probably we will do a reading club about a book called Modernismus by Reginald Blomfield. And it's a book published in the 30s against modern architecture, and considering how modernists hated it in the 30s, it must be good.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Intriguing.
I'm very intrigued because I haven't seen the book. I don't know what the book is about. So I know the architect. He was a very interesting architect of UK at the end of during the first decades of 20th century. He was a bit of a grumpy grandpa, People who are grumpy grandpa since they are 20s. So, but at the same time, he was brilliant. He was there when you have been in London, haven't you?
Um, not for too long. I have to
No,
go
no,
back.
but I mean Piccadilly Circus. You have been in Piccadilly Circus, no?
Yes.
All the buildings around Piccadilly Circus were done by this architect, by Reginald Blomfield.
Oh, I see.
So I mean, I think
Okay.
not all of them, but all the ones that are crown properties were done by this guy, except in the one. I think there is one building or two that are not crown property. Those ones obviously he didn't, but all the crown property was done by him. And all the beginning of Regent Street was done by him. So he did a lot. He did a lot. He was one of the most important architects, but he was sort of forgotten. I mean, everyone remembers Lutyens.
Mm.
Everyone has forgotten Blomfield, and it's a shame because Blomfield was really, really good.
Okay.
So that's why I
Interesting.
wanted to bring to, let's see what happens to doing like a public reading, a reading club about modernismus and see what people think. But this also requires like participation from everyone. So we'll see what happens. We will be speaking during the summer and then we'll see.
Yes, please keep me posted and
Of course, I mean,
updated
you're in the
about.
group, so whatever we keep getting, because once I get the full pack scanned, I mean, I just need to find the time to go one day to the museum and ask for it. So it's not the book is there. If you ask for it, they will give it to you. They will let you scan it. But that's it. I need to go and do it, and it's a couple of hours of time.
Of course.
That's the problem.
Understand.
Perfect. But until then, well, thank you very much for staying here until the end. Thank you, Nicolaus. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Federico. You have been very silent, but I hope that you have enjoyed as well.
Thank
But
you so
until
much.
then, have a good rest of the day, lovely rest of the weekend. See you in 2 weeks and see you in the group.
You too. See you soon.
Thank you. See you.
Thanks and bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.